Ah, we're here. Happy Tuesday. And we're back with another episode of Go FUD Yourself. Kind of hard to ignore Bitcoin and ETH news. So we're talking a lot about BTC and ETH today. What kind of crap are we going to cover?
Okay, well, yesterday the news came about the Bitcoin and ETH ETFs. We're just going to touch on that again, what people think that's going to mean for them, and why it matters to the crypto market and the price. And then we're also going to talk about maybe new ways to wrap Bitcoin and how that might improve stablecoins. And then we're also going to talk about how Bitcoin maybe should go up with the ETF, but maybe should go down because of what's going on in the Middle East. So that's interesting. And we're going to just move on over to ETH because that is enough Bitcoin. We're going to talk about how Norway is actually using an L2 for their CBDC. We're going to talk some more about L2 frauds. And finally, we're going to talk about Dencun and how it was actually successful. We'll end on some hype instead of some FUD.
That's strange.
I know.
Are you sick?
Yes.
That makes sense.
The
All right.
Bitcoin flu. I don't know.
That got weird. All right, let's go.
Let's go.
Okie dokie. We're back and we're going to start with Hong Kong. So I'm sure you probably have heard about this, but just in case you haven't, Bitcoin and Ethereum have seen notable increases in value following announcements by multiple issuers in Hong Kong, including China Asset Management and Ceara Capital, that they have been approved to list spot crypto ETFs. These announcements, which preceded any official confirmation from Hong Kong Securities and Futures Commission, have sparked optimism in the market. Despite the lack of a formal statement from the SFC and the subsequent deletion of some social media posts, the news has positively influenced crypto prices, with BTC surpassing 66,500 and ETH reaching 3,240. Are we on the road to 250? What do you think?
Okay, so one of the things that I thought was wacky about this is that it was leaked via WeChat. And I always, when things like that happen, I'm pretty sure that it's a purposeful leak. You know what I mean? They want to build some hype. They want to test the market a little bit. They want to make sure it is the right decision, so on and so forth, because they still, even though the news is blown up about it, they still haven't announced an actual date for this. They're saying soon.
Holy tin hat, Batman.
Yeah.
Did you pull it out today?
Yeah, I've got my Get High hoodie on, and it's a Tuesday.
So I guess that's where we're at. I mean, I think, and I've said this quite a bit. We've talked about this leading into it, and now as a consequence of the announcement or whatever it is, or the emergence of this being approved. I mean, I think this is incredibly good for the space. I think it's important to have kind of arm's length inroads into China and a lot of other Asian jurisdictions via Hong Kong as a financial hub. They're trying to become a crypto hub, which would never happen if other jurisdictions would get their head out of the sand. But for some reason,
listen, I'm not saying it's bad. I'm saying when ETF, because when we reported on this yesterday, it sounded like now ETF, but we're actually back at the same question that Merrick's asking. When ETF?
They were originally saying end of month, I think, right? The approval was supposed to be happening.
Validated.
We'll see. Either way, it's nice to have a little bit of positive momentum or something to stop the doom and gloom.
Absolutely. Okay, with that in mind, Bitcoin is way, way, way up. It is the highest that it's been since 2021. So Bitcoin's market share has surged to nearly 55% of the 2.4 trillion crypto market, the highest since April 1 year ago, 2021, driven by strong demand for the newly introduced US spot ETF, decline in smaller cryptos like altcoins, and then probably because of this Hong Kong news as well. With significant asset accumulation, these ETFs, who have major players like BlackRock and Fidelity Investments, have contributed to Bitcoin's robust performance, even as the broader market faces volatility. This resurgence aligns with upcoming crypto events, potential regulatory developments, and further influences the crypto sector's dynamics. JD, do you think it's a fluke? Do you think it's the time of year because it's the same time last year? Why is Bitcoin up?
Well, Bitcoin dominance is something that is always seemingly a topic of conversation. I think in cycles past, we have been looking for lower and lower and lower Bitcoin dominance because most of us are participating in the altcoin space to a greater extent than in Bitcoin. And I think at least this portion of the bull market has been almost exclusively focused on BTC and ETH. The waterfall has gone into meme coins, not necessarily into DeFi and infrastructure like everybody kind of thought it might. And so it'll be interesting. I think, it's worth noting that the focus is on Bitcoin right now. And so we shouldn't be sleeping on developments in the Bitcoin ecosystem. It's what institutions, regulators, and many industry participants are paying attention to. So, I mean, yeah, the market share is high, the dominance is high. Obvious, like to me, that of course it is. I mean, we're talking about a halving. We're talking about significant liquidity additions via the ETFs in many jurisdictions globally. Like it's kind of a big deal. So I don't see this as necessarily bad the way that we normally would. I think with increasing Bitcoin dominance, it's not good for altcoins, but I don't think it says anything terribly bad about the cycle. I guess that's my kind of 2 cents.
Are you a Bitcoin maxi? Like, do you think Bitcoin's going to replace gold and fiat?
No, I'm not really in anything maxi, honestly. I just think that there's often when we become a maximalist of anything, we put on the blinders and then we become ignorant to other opportunities and things that could be maybe better. And the fast pace of iteration in this space, I think, is what's really exciting. And so do I think Bitcoin is instrumental in this asset class? Absolutely. Do I think it's going anywhere? No. But I'm not a maxi. I just think it's definitely, something that is an asset class I appreciate and has a lot of advantages for people like us. So, yeah.
In the past, there's been a really big difference between like Bitcoin and these types of coins, especially Bitcoin and altcoins. But they seem to be wanting to be more relevant now, they being the broader Bitcoin ecosystem, not like Satoshi or something. Can you tell us a little bit about Bitcoin on altcoins or on other networks?
Well, Bitcoin on other networks, yeah. We can talk a little bit about DLC Link. So they've launched a new secure method for Bitcoin wrapping, which introduces dlcBTC on Arbitrum. So this link, or DLC Link, has introduced a new trust minimized method for wrapping Bitcoin called dlcBTC, which allows users to retain ownership of their BTC while utilizing it on different blockchains. This innovative approach uses discrete log contracts, DLC, to ensure the security of the assets, distinguishing it from other methods that require sending BTC to a third party. The service launched on the Arbitrum blockchain with dlcBTC minted as an ERC20 token, aiming to enhance security and user control in DeFi transactions.
Really rolls off the tongue, dlcBTC.
Yeah, it's an acronym I think I'll find myself saying often.
It is pretty interesting. No external custody. There are 7 attesters to ensure that it remains decentralized. It looks like it's probably going to blow up on Arbitrum, and Arbitrum's pretty huge right now. Like, there's a lot of people participating. They seem to have a lot of money. This might flood that ecosystem further. Where do you think it'll go next?
I'm not entirely certain. I know this is trying to address one of, I think, the biggest criticisms of using Bitcoin in DeFi per se. But I think a lot of people, this is where I kind of slightly partially disagree with this a little bit, with this move on Arbitrum and let's focus on a new way to wrap Bitcoin. I think a lot of people that hold large volumes of Bitcoin are more interested in continuing to maintain value accrual on Bitcoin, not just asset appreciation, but also they want value to accrue back to the chain. And so as a consequence of that, I'm not entirely certain if this is the only path forward. I think it's an interesting one, because to get Bitcoin liquidity on these other ecosystems, obviously that's one way to do so. But we'll have to see. I think we're going to see other means and other ways that users can implicate Bitcoin into DeFi. I guess I'm slightly biased in this regard, but I mean, there's a lot of EVMs and other types of L2s that are being built that are using the hash rate of Bitcoin and using Bitcoin security and so on and so forth. And so anyways, the consensus also eventually goes back and settles on Bitcoin mainnet. So it's kind of interesting. I think it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. Honestly, I don't know which one's going to work. Are people going to just simply accept different wrapped standards? Now there's wBTC, there's dlcBTC. I'm sure there's 500
I mean,
other
we've been
versions.
accepting different standards of stable coins, so maybe
Yeah.
maybe this is a new foray into the concept of a stable.
Yeah, I don't know if this is exactly how a stable comes about, but if I had to guess, I might know a person or two that's interested in Bitcoin-backed stables.
That's what I'm saying. It could be kind of that bridge, right? Okay, on this particular, been in DeFi for a long time, been in crypto for a long time. Do you think that having Bitcoin act on these other networks goes against that original concept of Bitcoin? Do you think this kind of nulls or negates what Bitcoin was meant for?
Yeah, sure. I mean, if you subscribe to the cypherpunk thesis and like manifesto of cryptography back in the day and how, you know, blockchain would secure this type of infrastructure, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, I don't know. I don't really have a good answer for that, to be honest.
I was just curious. This is a totally left field. I just was wondering what you kind of thought about it. So,
yeah, I mean, arguments could be made, I guess, that, you know, if you're still a BTC maximalist, you would still have to adhere to that early kind of philosophy of like decentralization at all costs, anonymity, privacy, it's immune to censorship and all of these other things. If those people are still married to those kind of key and core values, then obviously Bitcoin being on Ethereum arguably is pretty decentralized still, but there are central actors that governments or regulators could in fact stop from doing what they're doing. Bitcoin, on the other hand, in theory, shouldn't be able to be stopped. And so for that reason, I think there's a divergence of philosophies. I'm not sure, honestly, and I could be wrong here. I think the people that are still Bitcoin maximalists are maybe not so stuck in those common values, but rather that they just want things to accrue back to Bitcoin. They want to see the ecosystem evolve and development focus continue to be on not just Ethereum and other types of smart contract layers, but also future innovation on top of Bitcoin. So I don't know. I don't have a perfect answer though. I don't know.
No, you weren't supposed to. I mean, I know that was left field. If I'd had a good transition, we would have gone from stable coins to the Middle East and Bitcoin dropping. But I wanted to know what you thought, because this is a really unique time and there's some very novel technologies coming out. And there is already in DeFi a lot of discussion about, hey, if we have institutions, if we have regulation, is this against that ethos? But where does Bitcoin enter that conversation? Right?
I mean, I guess we'll find out.
All right, well, let me talk about the Middle East and Bitcoin dropping. So over the weekend, if you were paying attention, hopefully you weren't, the crypto market experienced a significant sell-off due to escalating tensions in the Middle East, particularly an Iranian drone and missile attack on Israel. Bitcoin fell by 8%, dropping from around 70,000 to below 62,000 before partially rebounding to above $64,000. This market reaction highlights the sensitivity of digital assets to geopolitical events, with crypto like ETH also witnessing declines of up to 10%.
Yep.
Maybe there's an argument to be made for Bitcoin being a stable, like it's being valued alongside world events.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure that I would associate as much of this market movement to the Middle East conflict as people seemingly are right now. I think the bigger news and the bigger narrative that kind of percolated near the end of last week was coming out of the inflation numbers. Inflation is, again, for the third month in a row, higher than expected, quite significantly higher than expected right now. And what that means is our soft landing is most likely not happening. The other thing is the entire market had been based on the expectations of rate cuts at least 2 to 3 times this year. And now, as of Wednesday, I haven't seen a single pundit that thinks that any rate cuts are going to happen this year at all. And so, to me, that potentially could signal a lot more macro headwinds. And I think, based on my discussions with prop firms and market makers and hedge funds, I think that's as important as geopolitical unrest, if not more important right now, because those headwinds can really impact enterprise adoption, liquidity, volumes, like all of the things that we need to keep this market going. So yes, Middle East sucks. World war or even a regional war in the Middle East would be catastrophic for the global economy, obviously. Hopefully we can find a way to thread the needle here, but it's seemingly a problem over there. So, and I'll be right next door pretty quick here. So it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting what the narrative is there relative to what we hear here. I'm interested to see. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure that the Middle East is the number one reason that Bitcoin had done anything over the weekend, but it definitely contributed for sure.
Yeah, but it's interesting to see how international news or geopolitical news is impacting crypto and vice versa, right? Just like Norway.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting because I was watching some interview or something, and obviously it was probably conservative leaning. But it's interesting. They're saying that, almost the entirety of global inflation and the global economy is being driven right now by supply restrictions by OPEC. And if there's less oil, demand is the same, price skyrockets. If the price skyrockets, oil related products are the inputs for pretty much everything that we consume. And so simple restrictions on oil outputs, they can actually manipulate the US economy by way of inflation, and by extension, put pressure on Biden's reelection campaign, et cetera, which I think is part of what they're doing right now. All of that to say, kind of ridiculous. I sure hope we can find our way through it. But there's a lot of problem brewing for the US economy and the de-dollarization and BRICS, and there's so many things kind of coming together. I think it's not going to be good for the US. I wouldn't want to be in traditional finance today.
Do you want to tell us about Norway?
Not really. It's just more CBDC stuff. Okay. Norway's central bank, Norges Bank, has embarked on a significant technological advancement by selecting Ethereum's Layer 2 solution, NAMI, for its central bank digital currency trial. This was originally explored in 2021. The initiative involves building and maintaining a sandbox environment for the Norwegian krone, aimed at enhancing the secure and efficient functioning of the nation's payment systems. This move aligns with Norway's position as the world's most cashless society and is a part of a broader exploration of digital currencies that has been ongoing for 5 years. Okay, CBDCs aside, do you think that this is exciting?
I think it's great to see a government using something that they already know works instead of building their own stupid solution that takes years because of bureaucracy and so on and so forth. So am I super bullish on NAMI? Am I super bullish on L2s? Maybe not necessarily, but do I love that Norway's bank isn't recreating the wheel? Absolutely, I do.
Yeah, it's something that I've heard a little bit about lately, actually, is with BlackRock now tokenizing their assets, a bunch of their assets on Avalanche blockchains via Securitize. People are starting to kind of change their opinion on how enterprise and incumbents may participate in the space. The expectation was, until about 10 minutes ago, that incumbents were going to continue to build walled gardens and try to silo their users away from everybody else. But I think they're realizing that with so much of the benefit of the technology is composability, is interop, is all of these things that you can do on publicly open blockchains that gives you exposure and access to multitudes more users and resources. I don't know. I think we're gonna see a lot more of this public blockchain participation. This is great. I've never heard of this L2 at all.
Okay, the other thing that I think is really cool about this is that Norway is already really experienced with digital currency. Like, they are fairly cashless. Most of the time when we're seeing a CBDC, it's actually in an area that still uses cash quite a bit, like Nigeria or even Russia, or the Sand Dollar project, which was in the Bahamas. And they're all talking about, oh, how are we going to digitize the rural area? I know blockchain is the answer. Whereas a country like Norway has already solved all of those challenges and now can meaningfully look at the technology behind a CBDC or behind their own stable so that they can make a good decision, as opposed to like also trying to onboard people in this tumultuous time, right?
Yeah, I mean, Norway of all groups is actually maybe a good case study for this, because their society is already quite comfortable with kind of the government oversight that they have on their current financial infrastructure. So for a lot of us, we're kind of saying, CBDCs, government's going to have too much oversight and too much power and yada, yada. Whether we like it or not, Norway's government already has said power. So they're not trying to replace a heavy cash ecosystem. And yeah, I think they're going to have a lot easier path in terms of gaining public acceptance of this. And so it'll be interesting to see, in an environment where you remove two of the biggest obstacles, is it still adopted meaningfully? And if so, then I guess it's worth more jurisdictions looking at how to consider the type of technology, which I don't love. But
and then, okay, so I'm like pretty excited that they're going to use an L2. I'm pretty excited that they can see the light. But then in that same breath, we start having more and more scams. I know we dived into scams yesterday, so we're not gonna really focus on it. But ZachXBT, a crypto influencer, has identified a series of fraudulent activities on a bunch of L2s, including Base, Blast, and Arbitrum. The investigator reported that a malicious group has orchestrated substantial thefts from several DeFi projects like Magnate, Kokomo, Lendora, and Soulfire, laundering about $1 million USD in illicit funds. ZachXBT urges users to withdraw their assets from these compromised platforms to avoid potential losses. JD, this is no surprise, but how does it contrast to something like a government adopting an L2?
I mean, this is still the problem with this space, right? Is that like we have all of this incredible stuff that's going on. And, there's, whether I like it or not, there's global governments considering using crypto as a means of payment, and CBDCs and all of these things. I think that we're seeing a lot of institutional adoption, incumbent adoption, which is all reason to be excited, I think. Right. But at the same time, we have so much of this still being circulated. We have exploit here, we have loss of funds here, we have draining of accounts here. Oh, don't keep any of your stuff in these protocols. And so for a new person coming in, if you see an article like this that says remove all your money from all these protocols, you're going, wait a second, what? Like, is there an outsized risk in all these protocols? Why these L2 solutions? Like, that's what I don't understand is nowhere could I find how they were doing this. It's not often I actually look, but in this particular case, I actually looked because I was curious how they
Soulfire, because you're so bullish on Solana.
Well, I thought maybe I would just try to replicate this scam, because $1.4 million, I mean, that's not bad for. Anyways, joking aside, I think there's a lot of scams. We talk about this all the time. Scams, exploits, manipulations, unfair advantage, whatever. They're all kind of under the same umbrella. When bull markets happen, when there's more eyes on the space, there's a lot more naive participants, so these things proliferate. Even though, if you've been around for a minute, it feels like you should be hopefully capable of identifying these things. You can't let your guard down because they're everywhere. And you can't completely avoid them either. There's no way that you can guarantee that you'll never have exposure to, some of these types of risks. But yeah, it's not a good look. It's not a good look when this is dominating the news cycle.
There's good news, there's bad news, and then there's really good news, like Dencun did well.
But yeah, I'll just read the damn article. The recent Dencun upgrade on Ethereum has significantly enhanced the scalability of its layer 2 networks, increasing network capacity by more than 11 times. According to a report from Brazilian digital bank Inter, the introduction of blobs, dedicated data spaces within Ethereum blocks for L2 chains like Arbitrum, Optimism, and Base, has allowed these networks to substantially increase their transactions per second. Particularly, Base saw its transactions skyrocket to 300 to 400 transactions per second, marking a major leap in trading activity and network efficiency.
So what I read is that you can scam people faster. No, kidding. I think this is actually really great news.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you can necessarily scam people faster. It's worth noting though, Base 300 to 400 TPS is still only 10%, less than 10% of Visa, MasterCard TPS for point of sale. And so that's kind of always been the like holy grail, so to speak, is once we can get up to consistent Visa, MasterCard performance and throughput, then we're talking. Now we can start to meaningfully consider how this can actually start to participate in point of sale and so on and so forth. I think it's definitely interesting. I think it definitely went off without a hitch. 11 times more, more performant is a big deal. Again, this is the first cycle that I'm kind of starting to change my tune here on ETH a little bit. I always kind of thought, and I still think there's a ton of room for innovation, but I did think that it was going to be more difficult for them to make everything backwards compatible to continue to evolve and innovate, while new L1s have it orders of magnitude easier in a lot of ways because you got a clean slate. But I have to say, transition to proof of stake was pretty seamless, all things considered. Dencun upgrade, pretty seamless, all things
I've been
considered.
secretly disappointed because, I anticipated something going wrong with blobs. So I made all these like memes about the horror movie, The Blob, and then like with ETH, and now I don't get to use them.
Yeah, I'm not sure that it's going to go bad. I hope it doesn't. I mean, the concept makes sense. This has been a big criticism, obviously cost and congestion, but also the frequency with which you can write things to the main networks. There's just a lot of efficiency upgrades here that I think is really exciting, and hopefully puts. See, another thing that a lot of people were concerned about was all these L2s coming up. How the hell is ETH going to scale and actually maintain any transaction ordering or any of that kind of stuff, notwithstanding congestion and gas fees? And so obviously this alleviated a lot of those concerns, which is pretty important.
Yes. All right.
So
we're ending on a positive note, which is not in our.
Oh, this is weird.
Maybe it's because people aren't going to see us all week. We just want to like leave a recency bias of positivity. You want to come back and listen next week.
Yeah, if the market recovers and I do okay in Dubai, then I'll see you next week. If not, maybe I'll just stay there.
I don't know if you could stay there if the market doesn't recover.
Yeah, I probably could. I would probably have to be some sort of like slave employee or something, but I'm sure I could stay. Anyways,
okay,
all right.
Make sure you like, share, subscribe. We like having you here. Hopefully you like having us. Try to bring a friend.
Is it like bring a friend day? We're having fun with friends on Friday. I know there's some other name for it. Yeah. So that's a good day to bring a friend. Bring a friend, sign them up, help them out. We'll pill them. And then they, it's going to be a great time. All right. Ceara, have fun in Vancouver. I think that's where you're going, right? I will. Thank you. Assuming I make it and there's no like active war going on. And with that, I guess we say to everybody, go FUD yourself for the rest of the week.